I've been obsessed with jewelry.
Okay.
I have loved jewelry. I have more than 400 pairs of earrings. I can wear, yeah. I've collected them since I was young.
So, but when we talk about manufacturers, how easy is it to find one for the beginners, if I ask you?
You can find manufacturers easily, I feel. You just need to find your manufacturer. That's the difficult part.
Yeah.
I think having your own website is very important right now. Everything is on social media. The most money all of us as brands spend on is our marketing.
Yeah.
I'm talking about performance marketing,
Yeah.
which is the
Yeah.
ads and all. We spend a lot of money. Like most of our money goes there only. I'm paying a lot of money. So
There are good conversions I've heard with performance.
it's truly good till it's not. It's even that's a whole cycle of its own. Like sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. But you should have a website. You should have a social media presence.
Hi guys, welcome to my third episode of my podcast series, and today I'm sitting with Arjavi Shah, and we are going to cover two topics. Why? Because she is actually a founder of a beautiful jewelry brand, and she also does fashion modeling. And this is why I felt she is the perfect person that if you guys want to open your own jewelry brand or you want to, get into modeling, I think insights from her can be too good for you guys. So I'm trying to have two parts. First part is jewelry design and jewelry, opening a jewelry brand. And the second part, we will be talking about fashion modeling. Let's start the conversation and tell us about yourself, Arjavi. How are you feeling, and also your whole journey of how you started the brand?
First of all, thanks for having me. How did I start my journey with the brand? It was like I always wanted to become a designer. I remember being in school and I went like, I want to become a fashion designer. But I never wanted to become a jewelry designer. For me, designing was, back then you knew Manish Malhotra as a fashion designer, and that's all I knew. I just wanted to make clothes, but I didn't know how to make them. Like I didn't know there was a whole process that made you like. NIFT made us tailors, right? In a way, like we know how to make outfits. I'm very glad, but I didn't know there was a whole process like that. Back then, for me, it was just that you just need to sketch pretty outfits, and that was it. I think that fascinated me, and I was very sure since I was like in 8th grade that I wanted to become a fashion designer. So I started working towards it. I thought that NIFT is where I wanted to go.
Of course.
And I prepared myself for NIFT. I got into it. I did 4 years in fashion design. And I launched a clothing brand, but it ended up being a jewelry brand.
And this was when?
This was in 2019 is when I launched. 2017 was when I graduated.
Okay.
After that, I literally had no direction as to, how to even start a brand. Like, what am I supposed to do? How to sell clothes, how to get your things out in the market. I had no idea. And I was clueless. I did not sit for placements because I was sure that, this is what I want to do. So it didn't make sense for me to sit for placements. And you were in NIFT. So... You know how much we work for 4 years, and then suddenly I had nothing. I was doing nothing, and all my friends started getting placed.
I know.
In like a month of
and
it.
That is a feeling where you feel, oh my god, I'm FOMO, big FOMO.
I was feeling so lost because every other day my friends are calling me, oh, I got this offer, I sat for this one, and they are offering this much, and I'm like, oh shit, what am I supposed to do? Because at that point, I was like, should I have set for placements? Because I don't know how to start my own brand, whatever. So you can't just start designing, and that's not it. That's not how a business works. So I did that. I was lost. And then out of nowhere, a senior of mine, she called me up and she was like, I'm leaving this job, and are you interested to become a designer here? And I was
was fashion.
That was fashion. That was fashion designing. And I was like, yeah, sure, I would like to look into it. and it was a fun brand. It was a young brand.
Which brand was that?
It was called LMNO.
Okay.
It was relatively new. It doesn't function anymore.
Okay.
But it was one of the nicest experiences because I learned Ayushi Chiripal. It was a part of Chiripal group.
Okay.
So Ayushi Chiripal started the brand,
Okay.
and I always say this, that I would want to become a boss like her,
Oh my
because
God.
she almost played like a very nice role in my life, where she knew how to draw a boundary. When it would be a switch, like you walk into her cabin for work and she's the boss, but otherwise I would never feel that way with her. If
And
we
I
are
think that's
traveling, that's something I wanted for myself when I became a boss. I wanted to be a boss where people can come up to me and talk and
Correct.
not be afraid of me.
Correct.
I wanted to have that kind of relationship that she built with me, and we are still in touch. Every time she visits Ahmedabad, we still meet. So it's kind of nice. But yeah, I replaced my senior who was working there. You would know her, I think, Dhwani Thakkar.
Oh yeah. She's yeah.
Yeah, so she used to work there and she wanted to move out, and I was like, okay, let me just try. I met Ayushi. We did a little interview, and then I started working there. It was fun, and I also started working on the brand because I was like, okay. The good thing that happened there was because even that was a new brand, she was also building it.
Correct.
So I got a lot of insight on, these are the steps.
Correct.
Please. And it was a clothing brand. It was just that our design language were a little different. Like I wanted to do very simple stuff with very more on the sustainable lines. And she was doing more not fast fashion, but fast fashion infused with classic designs or something like that.
Okay.
A very young brand. So I learned a lot there when it came to that, and then I was like, okay, after a year I was like, okay, now I want to take the next
So
step.
when did jewelry struck
It was
you?
it was just very random. This one day I was working towards, I was building a collection for the first launch of Arjavi, and it was all clothing, and then just randomly I was like, okay, let me do some jewelry pieces.
Right.
And I have this fascination. I've been obsessed with beads, glass beads, like little colorful beads. So I thought I'll do something on those lines, but I wanted a niche for myself. Like I didn't want to make the fabric and glass bead embroidered jewelry, because
Correct.
you get it everywhere.
Yes.
So I infused metal and I made one collection. It was not even a whole collection. It was like 4 or 5 designs I made.
So how did you make like the first pieces? You had a manufacturer?
Yes.
Okay.
So in college, I did, we had this, I don't remember the subject, but we had this, some assignment where
I'll tell you, material science in foundation, and they teach us how to cut metal. And how to shape.
not that, not even that. In 3rd year, we had to make, it was SDT, I think.
Fashion jewelry.
So no, it was surface
Surface
design.
design.
Yeah, and you had to make a product out of whatever you've done.
Okay.
So then I wanted to make jewelry. I've been obsessed with jewelry.
Okay.
I have loved jewelry. I've always I have more than 400 pairs of earrings. I can wear. Yeah, I've collected them since I was young. I've been obsessed with them. So, and that was my time where I could make some jewelry. So that's when I got in touch with a friend from Accessory Design, and she gave me a contact of a manufacturer who would make those 2-3 pieces for me for that assignment. And I was like, okay, I'll go to this person and maybe I can see if it works out. So I made it was on the same lines of the ones that I made for my project assignment. And we did that, and I remember using white fabric and colorful beads. Like there was like orange and blue and all that, and it was all ready. And now I have an elder brother and he's an architect. So I walk out wearing the earring. It was a square. It was
Okay.
just a square
Right.
with blue beads.
Okay.
And it was white fabric. I walk out wearing it. I'm like, I have no idea what I've made. And I'm like, why is it such a big square? And what is it? Are people even going to wear it? What is this?
So this is what he reacted, or you were feeling?
No, I was feeling.
Oh,
So I
okay,
was like, okay, let me go out and show it
Huh.
to them. I was not underconfident, but I was also like, I don't think I would wear it. And I go out and he just looks at me and he goes like, and he knows that I have put in my own money and it's a lot of money, like right in front of me. So he wants to be nice to me, but
Okay.
also wants to tell me, the truth.
Yeah.
So he goes like, sari to chhe, but I think you should add some color. And he goes on to tell me, add a color, like make it a little contrasting. So instead of the
Right.
white fabric, just
Right.
paint it. So I was like, okay, let me do that. And I sat and I painted all of those earrings. I painted the blue ones light blue, the orange ones light yellow. I did
Okay.
all of that. Like I hand painted them. It was not a good idea, but I did that. And I did my first show, which was the launch of the brand
Yeah.
here. I only invited my friends, family, and a few
Right.
people that I knew through work. So nobody bought the jewelry.
Aw.
I sold only 2 pieces that day, and I had made a lot because you can't even manufacture less quantity.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it becomes very
So
expensive.
what is this MOQ generally about? What is the MOQ?
At this point, I've reached a stage with my manufacturer where we don't have an MOQ because it's a running
Right, right.
production.
But
But,
at that time-
generally, I think at least 20
Right.
per design.
Correct.
Otherwise, you can obviously make 10 or 5 or whatever, but it's gonna be much more expensive. So, yeah, I think
So per design 20. Yeah.
at least for a good pricing, or you do 10 and a decent pricing. You do 5, it's gonna be very expensive. So,
Right.
how will you even sell it? I feel.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did that, and only 2 people bought it. I even remember those 2 people. One of them was Shirali. She bought a pair of earrings, and another one was a friend's mom. She bought it, and when I was billing it, I thought that they are poor guys are buying just to support me. And I was like, okay, never mind. It just
Oh
didn't
my
work,
God.
and everything. I had like 2 boxes full of
Oh my
jewelry.
God. Huh.
I was like, oh my God, this is never going to sell. This is like my hard-earned money. It was not even somebody else's money, and I'm like, this is a waste. What was I thinking? And then after a month, I did a show in Gurgaon. That was my first exhibition. That's when I realized that events are expensive. You have to pay a huge amount to be a part of it, to get your stall there. You have to travel, you take someone with you. I took a friend with me back then. And I don't know what happened. People just loved the jewelry. And
The same jewelry?
The same jewelry.
Oh my God.
And I sold so many. Plus, I made a new collection. I don't know why did I do that. I just made a new collection. It had very few pieces. I could not produce a lot. It was still in the works. So I made like 5-6 pieces and I put them there. And there was one earring, again a piece that when I designed it on paper, I thought that it's gonna be nice. But when I got the piece, I was like, I don't know what was I thinking. That is till date my bestseller. Like it sells the most. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's that event made me realize that everything has a market. You just need to find the right people. I
Beautiful.
came back home. I had 2 boxes full, and I barely had anything left. With
Oh
me.
my God.
So I was like, but
I think this is right. Yeah.
this is something is happening. I just need to find right people.
Correct.
And then with time, I think I started enjoying making jewelry more. It's so much. The process that we learned at NIFT. It's like you draw an inspiration, you make a mood board, then you proceed to make a whole collection out of it. So I still follow that. And because I follow that, I feel like it's more fun to make jewelry than clothes, because I can draw inspiration from a flower and make clothes, but it's not going to be as much fun if I want to make commercial clothes.
Yeah.
Unless I'm making like couture,
Yeah.
it's different. So I feel like with time, I really enjoy making jewelry much more. The process of making it is so much fun. You get to do so much with metal, and I cannot really go and make it. I can't do anything. I can only make sketches on paper. I can't even do CAD. So if I'm like right now, if I'm finding a new manufacturer anytime, it's such a struggle, because I'm like, I can only give you these sketches. Is that okay? Because what else can I do? Maximum I can make like a clay mold.
So these manufacturers ask for the CAD design.
Ideally, it becomes easier when you have a CAD design.
Yeah, but you can always hire someone who can do it.
Yes, but what happens is, I prefer a manufacturer in my same city, because it becomes very difficult to get your stuff on time with anyone.
Yeah.
So my manufacturer is in Ahmedabad.
Right.
And he's the one I've been working with since years.
Super.
So what happens is, when there's a sampling phase, sampling is a lot of back and forth. So now we have reached a point where he understands. Like, I just call him and tell him that, "Nee, I want texture deeper than this." Then he know exactly what I mean. There is not a lot of back and forth because of our understanding now. But when it comes to finding somebody new, most jewelry designing or jewelry manufacturers you'll find in Jaipur. Right? So the minute you go there, you can't even go there. Like, I can't really leave everything and go there for a few days to just find manufacturers, because nobody's going to sample out something for me immediately. Like, aaj subah I meet them and in the evening or sample is ready. That's not gonna be possible. So the sampling stage takes a lot of time. So it's best if you have your CAD design and you send it to them.
Yeah.
Or of course you can hire a CAD designer. Usually they also have a CAD designer to help you with.
Correct.
You can send references
Right.
of the things you want. I mean, it is not as difficult, but it is just not very convenient, I would say. But yeah, I think I still sketch it.
Yeah. So this is how you basically started, and then you've just continued creating new designs and uploading and growing the brand and everything. So, but when we talk about manufacturers, how easy is it to find one for the beginners, if I ask you?
It's not easy. I'm not gonna lie here. It's very difficult to find a good manufacturer. Even when I started, I knew this guy because I did a small project.
Right.
But that project was so small, it was literally 3 pieces.
Right.
I remember going to his shop with my mom at night, and I was like, "Can you please make this? I have my assignment due in like 10 days. So he did whatever he could do then. It was not great quality. But when you're selling your product out, that was for an assignment, it's fine. I just have to show it once and whatever. But when you're selling your products, it's going to reach so many people. If you want your buyers to become your buyers, like come back to you, you need to give good quality. You need to have so much, not just quality, like everything. With jewelry, a lot of people are very specific about the plating because of the allergies. So you need to find someone you can trust also, in terms of if they are saying that this is gold plating, how are you going to know? So someone you need to trust that, okay, he's telling me this is gold plated, so it is gold plated.
Correct.
There is no certificate of gold plated stuff. It's not real gold that you are buying.
Yeah.
You know how you get certificates for a diamond or a gold or whatever. So I think it's a trial and error game. You need to find people who can give you some contacts. You go to like 5 karigars, 10 karigars, and then you'll find someone who understands your style. With me also, when I started, he was not the only one I went to. I went to other 5 people. But I couldn't find someone whose work I liked. So he was the only one I found that, okay, this is perfect. This is exactly how I wanted.
But how can we really find one? Like, is it India Mart or is it Just Dial or is it like you?
I think even if you simply type on Google now, you will find karigars.
Yeah.
Like right now, I get so many Instagram DMs and emails. A lot of brands also manufacture for other brands.
Right.
So you just need to reach out, I feel, to a lot of people. Even if you go to good big brands, if you go to not big but like homegrown brands,
Right.
a lot of them manufacture for other brands and it's on their website itself. So you just need to find brands that you like their products. If you
Right.
like someone's product, if say you like Arjavi's finish, Arjavi's quality, you go to my website and maybe check that, oh, where does she manufacture from, or does she manufacture for me? Maybe reach out to the brand.
Right.
So I don't do that, but I'm sure a lot of people will get back that, yeah, we manufacture for you. It becomes, you can find manufacturers easily, I feel. You just need to find your manufacturer. That's the difficult part, I think. Yeah.
Correct. So, there are two ways a person can start their jewelry brand. It is what I know. You can give us a third way if there is. So, people DM me when they want to start a jewelry brand and I have to help them create their brand and everything. So, there are two ways which I have understood. The first is trading. They take some kind of like a niche product in jewelry or even accessories, fashion accessories or whatever, and they sell, or they get some kind of a source or contact from where they can source and they can sell. The other thing is you create your own niche, what exactly you do. Like you said, you have mood boards, you are getting inspiration from something, you're creating your designs, your manufacturer. So can you talk about these two ways and what one should go for, and what is the ideal way to start this particular thing?
Well, I don't know how. I can't say for everyone as to what you should do from either of the ways, because I feel that designing and creating something is when you're passionate about designing something. Right. So my brand, I wouldn't call it a business, because I didn't start it thinking that, oh, this is something I'm going to make money from. I started it because I wanted to create what I'm creating. Money came after. Right. So what I do is I do the whole process of designing, and then it sells and then I get the money. Now, if you go into the other way that you mentioned, that you just get stuff from somewhere and then you sell it, it is more of a business module in my understanding, because there are a lot of brands. You see those brands that make anti-tarnish basic hoops and those pieces. You can source them from, most of them source it from China. So you source it from China, you bring it here, you sell it. It's the easy way in terms of building a business. There you know that these products sell. So you are doing it because you want a business. Like I would do that if I want to make only money. Like I have no passion about, I'm not passionate about making designs. Then I would do that. It's like I want to do something of my own, and I'm not saying it's not a good thing. It's a very good thing if that's something you want to do. If a lot of times you want to do something in fashion, you want to do something in jewelry, and you want to have your own something, then it's a great way to do it. If you don't think that you're someone who can design, then you should go for that. And there are also manufacturers, say in Jaipur itself, you'll find manufacturers who have a catalog. And those designs are in between these two. So they are not as everyday stuff as those, and they are also not very design focused. They are somewhere in between. That could also give you a niche.
Exactly.
So, and there are a lot of manufacturers who do it exclusively for you. Like, this is my catalog. These are the designs. If you like 5 of them, I can produce them exclusively for you. You just need to give them that kind of quantity.
Correct.
So that is something you can do if you want to have a niche but not design yourself.
Right.
So I feel that there are multiple ways to go by, but personally for me, the only way I can do is design it, because I've not looked at it as a business that I'm going to do this. And even when I wanted to do this, I never thought that this is something I didn't even realize, honestly, the business part came in much later. I'm still struggling with like making it a business and working as, an entrepreneur, like making the brand or like doing everything as if it's a business, like putting money first.
Yeah.
It's little difficult for me, but I'm getting there. So
correct. But what if you're talking to a person who's just starting their own jewelry brand? So how should they start? Like, where should they sell? Should they invest in a good website, or social media is okay? Like, how should they start and build their brand?
I think having your own website is very important right now. Everything is on social media. The most money all of us as brands spend on is our marketing.
Yeah.
I'm talking about performance marketing,
Yeah.
which is the
Yeah.
ads and all.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of money there, right? Most of our money goes there only. And I don't think people realize, like, I meet a lot of people and they go like, I keep seeing your ads. And I'm like, thank God you are seeing it. I'm paying a lot of money. It better be seen, you know.
Yeah.
So
There are good conversions, I've heard, with performance marketing.
it's truly good till it's not. It's even that's a whole cycle of
Yeah.
its own. Like sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
It keeps dropping and going up. Even that is sometimes a little random. But you should have a website. You
Yeah.
should have a social media presence. I feel that right now, if you come across an ad, okay, you really like that product, you see something striking and you go like, okay, let me check what is it, which brand is it. You will, if it is priced a certain way, your average selling cost is not very low, you will go like, an average Indian will go like, okay, let me check the brand. Is it authentic? Am I
Yeah.
going to get my product? If I'm spending 4,000,
Yeah.
I will check the social media first. You're
Yes.
not only going to rely on the website of the brand, right?
Yes.
You're going to check the social media. You will go like, okay, is this reliable? Does it look reliable? Are they even active? If my last post is 2 months ago and I'm trying to sell a pair of earring for 4,000, people are not going to buy it, because people are going to think that it could be a scam.
Yeah, how
right?
authentic are you?
Yeah. Am I going to get my product? If something happens, will I be able to reach
Yeah,
to them?
exactly.
Yeah. Recently, I did an exhibition and I was making someone understand why it is priced a certain way. And I was like, you don't need to worry. You can reach out to me whenever you want to, if something happens. And she goes like, nobody replies to messages. And I'm like, you realize it with talking to your customers or just people who buy. You realize that what they are saying, where they are coming from is right.
Yeah.
I've also faced that. I have shopped from brands which are very popular and I've struggled to get a response.
Yeah.
Like I'm writing emails and I'm like messaging them. I'm like, can you please help me with this? Where is my order? Or this is not proper. Is there an exchange? This is damaged. It takes a lot of days for brands to reply, and as a customer, I get it.
Yeah.
So you have to put yourself as a customer first and then make your brand.
Yes.
So these are the things, these are basics. When you think of making a brand, you're thinking of launching a brand, you think of yourself as a customer, and then you will realize that there are so many problems that I face as a customer that I don't want my customers to face. So these are things that will make it much more easier, like having a website. If you don't have a website, I personally don't, I feel it's not as convenient to shop from brands that just ask you to DM. You know,
Hmm.
because how many things
I
will I
want-
ask
yes,
them for?
yes, yes.
If you have
And
like
then the customer ghosts you a lot
Yeah,
of times
yeah.
after they know the price.
yeah, because then say if you're a clothing brand and I see a picture on your feed of one top and I message you that, oh, hey, how much is this price at, and you tell me a price, then I like 5 other things on your feed. I don't want to ask you for 5 pieces.
Correct. So
You know,
true.
so it's so much more convenient when you have a website. I can just go and check.
Yeah.
Maybe even if you don't have a website that can take orders, you can at least have something, maybe a lookbook where you have all your products on a link and it is priced,
Right.
something like that,
Yeah.
which is easier for people to just understand the pricing. I think price is something that any customer
Would
would
want
look
to
at.
see it,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's the first thing you want to know. This is nice, but how much is it for?
Mhm.
Then you go into the whole
And-
cycle of
yeah.
understanding how is the brand or what is the product and all of that.
And for offline exhibitions, pop-ups, they are good. They work well.
I think pop-ups are a gamble. So it is definitely, it does give you a lot of exposure. A lot of brands will agree with me and a lot of them will not. It is, I'll definitely agree to the fact that, when you touch and feel a product, it's gonna sell easier. It's easier to, like, for me, my clothes would sell much more at a pop-up than it would sell like online. Because, I don't make something that is out of the world when it comes to clothes. So why is it priced like that? Because I use a fabric that is expensive. So you need to touch and feel the fabric. Once you wear it and you like it, you're going to shop online. But that first time needs to be touch and feel.
Yes.
So yes, pop-ups definitely help in exposure. Now, I've always looked at pop-ups as marketing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just go like, okay, even if I don't do sales, at least 100 people are going to see my product.
Exactly.
Right? Even if you're passing by and you are not someone who is interested in jewelry, you will look at it and you will have it in your mind that,
Yeah.
okay, this is something. Maybe I can pick something for a friend or for gifting or whatever.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people come in when I do pop-ups, just like are passing by and they see something. You see so much something nice and then you just walk into it and you're like, oh, they just admire it and they go like, I don't wear it, but my daughter would or my friend would.
Exactly.
And I'll share your link with her or whatever. Then I have a potential customer there. Or 5. You never know.
Correct.
So pop-ups are important. You just need to choose wisely because events are very expensive. It also, I feel, I also do events. I also do pop-ups on the basis of who is organizing it and which are the other brands. Curation is very important to me.
Yes.
Because that's how I am placing my brand.
Exactly. Brand positioning.
Yeah, it's very important because I don't want to do a flea. It doesn't work for my brand, right? It just doesn't. Like it doesn't make sense with the kind of positioning I want for my brand. Now I have to do an event where there are other brands which are my contemporary, right? I'm not saying necessarily other jewelry brands. It could be clothing also.
Yes.
It could be anything.
And
Accessories.
it should match with the vibe.
Yeah, it should match. So I feel pop-ups are important when you want to place your brand. It is good placement. It is very important. Also, if you want to talk to your customers, I feel it's the easiest to sell your product if you are selling it.
Yes.
Nobody can represent you the way you can represent
Yes.
yourself. So if I don't like, interacting with people, I'm not very social. But it's also very difficult for me to keep a smiley face. It's very natural. It's not like I don't like you and I'm making that face.
Yeah.
I naturally have a straight face. So recently I did a pop-up and I was sharing the stall with Nirjara, you might know.
Yeah.
And I was talking to someone and my customer, she was trying something and I was just standing there. Oh, you're tired also.
Yeah.
I was standing there and Nirjara from behind there, she goes like, she's like, can you smile? Like it's not that I don't want to smile, it just doesn't come naturally to me. But I've realized that the more you interact with people, the more trust they have.
Yes.
You know, the minute I put my face on my brand, it changed so many things for me.
Exactly.
I never wanted to do that.
Even as a third person, I'll tell you something. When I see your brand and when I see how you market and everything, you are the face of your brand, and that works.
Yeah,
That works. And
it
I've
does.
seen this in so many brands. It just works because there's this trust level also. I'll give you an example of Aman Gupta. Very
Yeah.
something very different from what we do.
Yeah.
But after Shark Tank,
Yeah.
I started buying boat.
Yeah.
Because I had this trust. I like the vibe he has.
No, yeah, true. That's true, right?
Yeah.
That's absolutely correct
So-
because
A lot of founders are
Yeah.
now starting their own page and they are tagging their
Yeah.
business and
Yeah.
everything. This is a strategy also.
yeah,
And
is.
it works.
It is. It works. It's like, why do your friends and family buy from you? Because they trust you.
Trust.
You're building a family only
Yeah.
with your brand.
Yeah.
So you need them to trust you. You
Yes.
can't always. I feel that I did not want to put my face because, you know, I had my face at so many places. It just didn't make sense to me. And then because of COVID, I had no choice. I couldn't find models, and
Oh.
nobody was gonna come and shoot for
Oh.
me. There was no way you
Yeah.
can shoot during lockdown. So I started shooting on my own. It was very difficult back then because I was doing all sorts of things. I had a tripod, thankfully. So I would put my tripod, I would cover my face with, like, I would have fabric hanging through the tripod behind me, and I would be like doing
Really?
it was damn funny also. If you see from the outside, you was basically seeing a ghost. Right? I used to do all of those things. I would edit and post. And I also had, there's this girl called Arya Ki. I just randomly saw her Instagram, and I don't know, I started, like, I asked her to come for a shoot that I was styling for a brand. And then she came, and then she was like, let me help you. She was also very enthusiastic. She's much younger. And she was like, let me help you with the brand. Let us make some content. I was like, okay, sure. And she was very good at it. She taught me how to, like, I learned how to edit. Because she would take a lot of time editing videos. And I'm like, why are you wasting so much time? I'm feeling bad. Because you are putting so much time for something that we are literally doing as time pass. And she's like, no, you need to understand that once you edit on beats of the music, that also, it's become so much more engaging
100%.
and interesting, right? It was such a small thing that I learned from her one day when she was sitting right besides me, and I go like, why are you wasting so much time? I feel bad. I genuinely started feeling bad because she was like editing for a long time. And I think I picked that up from her, and I still do it. I try to edit on beat. So, so then I would shoot, and then I would edit, and then I would upload. And during lockdown, I think I built my brand's visual aesthetic. It came out in ways that I did not think it would.
That's so important.
Yeah. And I think also the minute I put my face and people started recognizing, maybe not me, but they started recognizing my brand. Like I went to a free the other day, not right now, long back, and I was just going and I was wearing a mask, okay, and this girl, she goes like, you from Arjavi? And I was like, yeah.
I am Arjavi.
my friend was like, no, she is Arjavi, and I'm like, hi. Because they started seeing so much of me on my page that even I got tired of seeing myself on the page. Honestly, I wanted some break.
Yeah.
But I realized that it is important to put your face. If you don't want to put your face, put something out that connects your audience with you.
Some kind of bond.
Relationship.
Some
bond, yeah. Because if you don't wear your products, how can you expect anybody else to wear your products?
And it's a trend right now. It's a strategy everyone uses, that to create a bond, to create that relationship for that trust level, and that actually sells.
Yeah. Especially if you are making something even a little bit different, that it's not, easy to get picked, you need to build some kind of trust. Even if it's not you, get somebody else to do it. But there are a lot of brands who do that also. They don't, the founder doesn't, show their face, but they have one model representing them.
Yes.
The same face. It might not be consistent, but it is still like consistent in a way that, after some point you'll see that face again. So you start relating that face to this brand.
Yes.
So that I think is instant trust.
Yeah.
And it is important to do that.
So, what I've seen in India, that even if I talk about my family and everybody, so we have this thing that they only wear pure silver, pure gold, diamonds, whatever, emeralds and rubies, and all these things are very real. And they have this thing कि यार, मुझे artificial jewelry में पैसे नहीं डालने, that mindset.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? And how have you figured your niche audience, your target audience?
That's you're very right. In India there are people, especially the buying crowd, which is not our age. It's that age group. Most people don't want to invest in jewelry, which is not real. And I get it. But like recently when I did this event I was talking about, some lady walked in with her husband and she really liked a whole set, like a choker and a necklace and earrings. And usually they want a whole set. If they want earrings also, they want bangles also and everything. And then she was looking at it and then she realized the price and then she was like, why is it so expensive? And then she's like, no, it's not even gold. I don't wear anything except gold. And her husband kept telling her that you can't look at it as something that's going to give you a return value in that way. It is a statement piece. You wear it sometimes and that's it. You're not going to get it in the real gold segment, right? You're not going to get what I'm making in a jeweler's store. You're not going to get. So you also, like this is what he was telling her. You take it, you can wear it for an occasion and that's it. You can't keep thinking that everything that I have has to be gold. I don't wear something that's not gold. Also, recently I made a collection which has a little bit of more Indian touch.
Right.
Now I have a huge necklace there. It is inspired by our traditional Saat Ladao, Bara Ladao har. Okay. And it is very expensive. It is priced at 22,000 or something. And I get it. It's expensive for it not being real. It's not gold. It's nothing. It's gold plated only. But now this also came from a customer. She went like, this is something that I would take to a wedding where I'm traveling. Right? Because I want to wear heavy. But I cannot take all my real jewelry.
You just can't for destination weddings. Even I don't carry.
Yeah. So you're going for 5 events. You're not going to carry like 10 different jewelry pieces. It'll be too much. You'll constantly be like, okay, there's a concept called locker jewelry and non-locker jewelry. This is non-locker jewelry.
Yeah.
So I think I don't try to convince people to buy it. Like, I understand it's not comfortable. I don't want you to buy something and then just put it in your wardrobe and you just never reach out to it. I want you to wear my pieces.
Exactly.
So if you think that you're going to wear it, even if you wear it once or twice, occasionally wear it, pass it to somebody else, then it's fine. Then you get it. But if you're very sure that there are people like that who are not going to wear, like you said, in your family, you don't wear anything except your gold.
Even if I buy, they'll say, you got this?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get demotivated. Yeah.
My mom, she wouldn't wear. Now she started wearing my jewelry sometimes, rarely. Where she also has a problem where, she cannot wear anything in her ears unless it's gold. I know a lot of people like that. You can't wear it because it just gets infected.
Yeah.
So that's why it is gold plated, so it helps you a little bit with
this
the
is a very
infection.
nice thing to do.
Yeah. So, but I get it. Even my mom will go like, "Karna lagan ma thodi aao khoto pehna." I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Most people do not want to, and I honestly don't get into the whole struggle of trying to.
So have you tried, like, because Indian audience is like this, internationally people accept and people
Yes.
like to wear statement
Yes.
pieces. They accept this whole concept and everything. So maybe have you tried getting global or
yeah,
thinking?
yeah. I
So how was this whole process for you, going global?
see, going global, it is definitely more acceptable when it comes to this concept that we are talking about. People easily invest in pieces that are not real gold or diamond or whatever. I mean, it has been. There are two ways when you go global. One is there are three ways actually. One is your website, you directly ship it to the customer, which in my case, it is very expensive because the shipping cost sometimes, if you are someone staying outside and you want to buy 2 pairs of earrings, which is coming down to 5,000 total. And now I'll have to send it to you. Now when you have to ship jewelry, you cannot just send a package. You also have to send a certificate. It's a valuation certificate that you have to get made every time from a jeweler. Even that is going to add an expense. It is anywhere between 500 to 1,000.
Oh.
So that now your total comes to 1,000 plus your shipping cost, which is going to be at least 1,000, depending on where it is, minimum 1,000. So you are going to spend somewhere around 2,000-3,000 on the shipping for a product that you bought for 5,000. So for me, it becomes very difficult, honestly, when it comes to selling it directly to a customer right now. The other way is to stock with stores that I do. It's easier because you stock, you sell, you earn, or it just comes back.
Correct.
And the third way is there are a lot of people who buy upfront from you, which is very nice for me.
Yes.
I have to give the commission, whatever commission I'm giving to a store, I give it as a discount, that whatever I can afford. But then it goes in. It's a little bit of a bulk order.
Yes.
Comparatively. So this is the third way that you go by, and that is the best when it comes to a business point of view.
Correct.
Now there also it's a little tricky because when it comes to people buying stuff from you directly, most of them are not multi-designer stores. So you don't know how are they going to sell it. Are they going to sell it under your brand name, or are they going to sell it? You never know. With jewelry, it's even more tricky because how are you going to put labels and tags and everything?
Yeah, but you can have a contract or something.
You can, but then how will you know? Honestly, like how will you know if somebody is selling in New York my pieces? She has bought like 50 pieces from me. How am I going to know what price is she selling at, or what is going to happen? It's true. Like this, so many things work on trust basis. But with me, what I've done is my jewelry has a logo everywhere. Like on the back of it, there's a tiny logo.
So no matter wherever you give, that logo will stay.
It will stay. Yeah. I'm not removing it. The minute you remove that piece, you can't remove the logo. You can't scratch it out. It's lasered. And that I did because years ago when I actually started my brand, I think 1.5 years into it, I had sent my stuff somewhere in India only with a multi-designer store. They were doing a pop-up and they had put my pieces there. I didn't travel. A lot of times I don't travel for these shows. And then I was very new as a brand also. So there were very few brands displaying, and I saw all those videos and everything that the multi-designer store was putting on their Instagram.
Correct.
And I saw that, like, that video where you start from the outside and you're showing that this is all we have tomorrow.
Right.
So she didn't have my name on the what do you call it?
The hoarding. No credits.
My name was not there, and there were other brands. So I was like,
exactly.
What is happening?
Yeah.
And then she panned the camera inside, and then there was a table where all the jewelry was displayed nicely. But I didn't know if my tags were there, what price were they
Exactly.
selling at, what is it, like what is happening. I have no idea. So that's when I decided. Now I did ask them. Now I don't know if I have no idea what happened. But that's when I decided. I just felt that I need to do something about this. And I was like, now I'll get all my pieces lasered. I'll send you. You can't do anything about it. Because the minute somebody buys it, somebody picks it up, they can see my little name somewhere. So I know, at least I'm at peace knowing that nobody can sell it as their own.
Exactly. And that's important.
It is important. It is more difficult with jewelry. Not every jewelry brand does that. Even for me, it becomes a little difficult sometimes when a piece is very small or very thin. Like, how do I laser the name? So, with international, I feel these are the 3 ways I got in it. I do all 3 of those.
Yes.
But the response is good.
Yeah.
It's with international, I feel, to understand your market, maybe you need to go yourself. I've not done it yet. Some places I know, because now I depend on the people who are selling my pieces. So it also depends on their value, right? It's like your people trust me. So there they trust them to buy whoever they are bringing when it comes to a multi-designer store or these pop-ups or whatever. So I think, with international, maybe people accept it more. In India, however, there is a huge segment that accepts jewelry that is not real. A lot of people do. A lot of people who wear real jewelry only also have started, investing in pieces that is not real because of the other values that they give you. They give you design value.
Exactly.
They give you the value of, you can take it to your destination wedding and not worry about it. Now you're not going to get the same thing at the same price when you get it made in real gold or whatever you do. So I feel people are also open to accepting. Even now weddings, brides wear.
So then there's this mehendi and the haldi functions where people are now there's this trend of getting away with the roses and the flowers and everything. Now people are wearing such jewelry and there's a lot of things happening. The kaliras and a lot of things they do and try. So the brides actually try to have that statement when they are wearing.
Yes. I feel like this is something I never thought would happen with my jewelry because I never saw it as wedding jewelry. But a lot of brides wear my jewelry for their mehndi and haldi. This particular collection I have, which is inspired by Mogra. So it's flowers. So a lot of people wear it for their haldi and mehndi. And the first time it actually happened was not even an Indian bride. She was from, I don't know where, it was long back, and she wore it for a white wedding. She wore long earrings and a necklace from me. And it was a white wedding. And it was a court wedding. I do beautiful pictures. I have no idea where they are, but I remember them because it was long back, and I was surprised to see a bride wear my jewelry for her wedding. But also in India now, a lot of times when on the day of your wedding, when you're wearing those kundan pieces or whatever, so many pieces are not gold based. Like the Mangtika, it could not be. It may not be, not always,
correct.
or the not.
But for the wedding, what happens is, the Hindu wedding, if I talk about, they have this traditional style, the kundan design, where they want to have the whole combination and styling is like that. But yours is a contemporary sort of, design. So haldi, mehendi, then brunch, all these dinners. So the pre-wedding, I think, works great.
It works very well. I never thought that brides would wear it, but it's just people wear it and they still wear it. And I get I customize also a lot because then you want to wear a choker and then you want a smaller earrings or a mangtika. So you would know Rachna.
Surname?
Shah.
I don't know.
She was my senior, 1 year senior to me, and she recently got married and she wore some of my jewelry for her haldi, and she wanted to get like a small mang tika customized and all of that. So yeah, it's still people do wear it. I feel in India also there are people who don't wear it. They just go like,
but that's not our target.
Yeah. So it's fine. There are so many people. You will find your target audience. So it's okay.
Super. So I think let's move to the second part, which is fashion modeling, which you do, and you are super in it. And I've seen your dancing and everything. I think that might be an inspiration for your modeling. And let's talk about everything in the second part.